Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. Joining me is Brian, the equine. So far, nobody else has jumped in, but you never know. Somebody might not. But we have a few things to talk about on the program today. The first thing that I want to mention has to do with the Detroit Lions. I have a suggestion. Find yourself a football team. I got another suggestion. Find yourself a head coach. That guy, yeah, he looks more like a Furby than he does a head coach. Matt Patricia, it's I mean, what in the fuck? I mean, he's on the sidelines and he has this look like, oh my God. It was kind of like that Talking Heads video. How did I get here? Letting the days go by. Yeah. I mean, the guy looked like his team just didn't try. I mean, it was so Browns-esque. It was like, that's what I would expect from the Browns in years past, like where the fourth preseason game where the guys on the roster said, I don't want to be on this team. And they all didn't try, right? They were awful. That was as unspirited a performance. Yeah, the Great Lakes Classic. The lakes aren't great. If that's the classic, boy, did we kick the shit out of them. Oh, in every aspect of the game. Just kick the shit out of them. And so it's cut day in Berea. I think in baseball, they referred to it, or maybe in football too, as the Turk. Do you remember when they used to call the guy, the designated guy, who would go around in spring training and tell the guys, well, welcome to AAA. You're out of here. Pack your gear. That guy was the Turk, and he would show up at night. The players found out they got cut, in essence, out of spring training, and where they're.
That was one of my favorite scenes from Major League when Corbin Burnson pranks.
Right.
And gives him a slip. So,
and you know what the horrible thing is? The horrible thing was, if you read Ball 4 by Jim Bouton, which is necessary reading even today, even though the book is, 48 years old or whatever, that is must read because it explains some of this shit. And everybody on the team knew who the Turk was. So on cut day, that was like the last fucking guy you wanted to see anywhere near your room. It's like, because if the Turk had visited you or one of your close friends on the team or somebody that you've been hanging out with was told they were going to Little Rock, it's like, so today is the Turk day.
Before we get too deep into who we speculate as to who is getting cut, what do you think is going to happen to Kendricks? Was he already cut?
Kendricks, they got rid of. They actually got rid of his contract. He's done. He's gone. Okay. I mean, the Browns have dumped him. And again, this is one of these situations where obviously the Eagles knew, and obviously the Browns didn't find out. And the people who were surrounding him, his agents and representatives, lied. And I think they should have their licenses stripped. Because if you lie, then you are as deceiving as the guy who did the insider trading. I mean, I think that anybody who represented Michael Kendricks in that way, I honestly believe that those people should be terminated from their positions. Just like if you were a doctor, you would be, or a lawyer disbarred. You should not be allowed to be a representative or an agent when you lie about something like that. The other thing that's funny about that is that 1.2 million was the alleged haul from that he acquired for this insider trading, which is small potatoes for Jimmy Haslam. I find it really interesting that Haslam withheld millions of dollars of rebate checks from multiple trucking businesses and is still walking around with that smarmy smile on his face. And here's the linebacker and he's like, bye, you're out of a job, and it's the whole thing is just an unfortunate occurrence. The Browns now are allegedly in communications with the Oakland Raiders about Khalil Mack. We'll believe that when we see it. The question is what the Browns would have to give up to get that.
They can't afford the price tag. The current price tag is 2 first-round picks. Well, there's only there's the Green Bay Pukers and the Green Bay Pukers that have 2 first-round picks this year for 2019.
Well, they have to. Well, that's what they're saying the price is, but you don't know how it's being shopped around the league. But the Browns have a sudden problem because Hendricks being disposed of, and with Jannard Avery, who had a great camp, injured with a hip injury, and I'm not hearing anything, honestly, about how long he's going to be gone for. So now suddenly we're kind of back down to Jamie Collins and all of that, and I don't know. The Browns should be aggressively looking at options. All right. So,
well, I think they're going to be looking at the cut wire from some of these other teams that are linebacker deep. So,
well, there's already activity. Brogan Roback's been cut. All right. So if you're living in a cave and you don't know who the cuts are as of this afternoon, there might be more that's happened since. Tight end Stephen Baggett, who should be pronounced his name Baguette because he's closer to toast now. He was waived. Christian Boutte, the defensive back, was waived. Elijah Campbell, Anthony Fabiano, the offensive lineman, Jeremy Falk, who actually flashed in this game, who was the kid who went to a community college. He was waived. Avery Genesee, who I don't even know, Fred Lawina, I don't even know who that is, Jaron Smith and Blaine Woodson. And then the name that would be most familiar to you at this point, CJ Board, was waived because of injury. Justin Curry was waived because of injury, and defensive lineman Lenny Jones the same. And, of course, Roback, who became somewhat of an instant personality, But
he may get signed to the practice squad later.
Yeah, well, that's all part of this. There's going to be a lot of speculation. Matthew Days, who looked really good, got hurt, got an ankle injury, and I've heard nothing as far as update about his condition. And the question about Matthew Days is, can they... is he going to be on an injured reserve list? What did he do to his ankle? I'm not sure. He looked so great in the time he was in. I think the belief was the Browns were going to have, Hyde and Duke Johnson and Chubb, and that it was entirely possible that Matthew Days could make the roster, especially if they found that he was a stronger special teams player. But he would have been a logical backup for Duke Johnson if Duke got hurt, because he does similar things. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's shifty. He's kind of a small runner. But now we're not going to know because he's got an ankle injury. So we don't really know what the story is with that.
Oh, and did Hilliard get cut?
Well, I mean, I think everyone's expecting Hilliard to get cut. He did have a nice game, but again, when the other team's not trying, everybody kind of looked good, what I was impressed with were the cuts that Chubb was making. Decisions, that's what everything is about. When you're a running back, is having the patience. The greatest running backs were not guys who just went full bore ahead. Think of the great running backs, Jim Brown or Marcus Allen or the guys who Gail Sanders, Eric Dickerson. What you remember about all of these backs is that they could go get the ball and it almost like they'd glide for a minute, and then they would see something and make that hard cut and get to that hole and burst through. And they have that ability to the vision to look ahead at where the block's coming. And the thing I really like about Chubb, if we had a good offensive line, is that he's a very old school runner. He's not a hippity hop kind of let's spin around and be elusive kind of guy.
He's much closer to Frank Gore.
He's a patient runner. He's a guy who reads his blocks. He got caught from behind on one play because he was looking at a block in front of him. But he's not afraid to slow down. He also has a really good hop cut where he hops and goes into a cut that is really and he visualizes where the pieces it's like a chessboard. He's able to see that. I was impressed with the way that Chubb ran the ball. With that said, there are many people who are guessing, and Hugh Jackson is only making things more confusing because now Hugh is saying, well, Bitonio may not start at left tackle. It's like, well, what now? And I guess this guy, Harrison, and the history of Harrison, number 78, the offensive lineman, they're looking at him as a left tackle, that he really flashed in the game against the non-trying Detroit Lions. If you're not aware of his story, he went to Texas, survived 7 games before twice being thrown off and finally totally thrown off the team, and then ended up at West Georgia. I didn't even know there was such a school. And he played at West Georgia, and he was a guy who was hanging around in the draft because inexperienced, played against low-level competition, but extremely athletic. This is a guy who ran a 4.9 40, who got the length. He's about 6'9". But not a heavy guy. He almost is like a power forward in basketball, but extremely quick, but very raw. He looked very good in yesterday's game if you were watching. He consumed what was in front of him. They're thinking...
So he's about the size of Chris Pike then.
The former captain of the Enterprise? Not that Christopher Pike. No. Okay.
No.
Okay. Just making sure because he was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking Star Trek before the show, so I'm just ribbing Brian here with my eclectic knowledge of original Star Trek episodes. We were talking about the Horta earlier on. If you're not a Star Trek fan, you won't remember the Horta, but the Horta was hurt. Forget it. If you give away the show, it's no fun to watch for the 84th time. But Harrison, if they start him or if they're thinking of starting him, it sets a chain reaction going, because if they want to move Bitonio back to his guard position, that means Austin Corbett has been either demoted or he's being moved to center. Now, this is interesting. Corbett played a lot of snaps in the game. A lot of snaps. I was surprised he was in as long as he was in, and I'm not sure what they were looking at here. But the rumors that are circulating is that Treader has been less than ideal at the center position, and if Harrison could become the left tackle, putting Bitonio at his strong suit, they would move Corbett over to center. Now, how you can do this before the game without the experience of the snap transfer from Corbett to Tyrod Taylor, I have no idea. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing and what Hugh Jackson is talking about, which God only knows isn't always accurate, we know. But that the offensive line could be seriously shuffled, if not now, in a couple of weeks to come. So,
which is a massive mistake, because you finally have 5 guys that are somewhat gelling together, And now you're going to clusterfuck that all up, and they're going to have different timing. They're going to have different footwork. They're going to have different skill sets.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how well the five are gelling, because if you look, I think that Sean Coleman's played his way out of football, and I think that Drango has too. I think both those men are going to be cut.
Oh, I definitely, I would have cut them a long time ago.
Well, I think it's going to happen finally. And, again, Harrison is a guy who he's one of these athletic freak guys, but the rap on him, besides that he had a tainted past, is that he couldn't carry and maintain enough weight on his frame. That was, but I believe he can, because Joe Thomas did. Look how much weight Joe Thomas has lost since he got out of football. I mean, these guys hit the weight room and they eat, and they expend calories in the weight room and they get bigger. I believe he can get bigger. The question is, what are they seeing on film that would make them interested in moving Harrison over and moving Bitonio back? You're not hearing a lot about how well or how not well Bitonio is doing at the left tackle position. But we do know that he's an all-pro left guard. So, I mean, it never made any sense to me why they moved him in the first place, because it just jumbled up the line that much more. But it's possible that there's going to be shifting going on as far as the offensive line. Like I said, with the running backs, you got to feel bad for Matthew Days. He puts in his best performance, then he gets hurt. And that might open up for the Tulane kid, Hilliard. But Hilliard, to me, didn't look as fresh and as bursty, if that's such a word. Hilliard didn't look like he had a burst like Matthew Days does. That's just, and I have no indication that he catches balls well out of the backfield, as opposed to Days, who can. And with the plays that we have installed, Duke Johnson is an important part of the equation. Duke Johnson did not carry the ball from scrimmage hardly at all during the preseason. He didn't even have a pass thrown to him. So we were not trying to subject him to physical punishment, but it might be a good idea to have a small back who can replicate some of the functions of him. But again, this is all to be determined. Go into the chat room here and say hi to some people while I have a chance to Amsterdam and Bronk and
Bork.
Bork, yeah, the amazing Bork. As far as other positions are concerned, this Khalil Mack thing is real interesting, because what I will tell you is, if the Browns are really that interested in Khalil Mack that they would make a serious offer for him, and they do have the money, all right, to get it done. They may not have the assets to get it done. I can guarantee you that they are not real hyped on Jamie Collins. This is what that tells me. Or not sure that he is completely recovered. But it's just talk at this point. It's just noise. I'll believe it when I see it. Other than that, I think we pretty well know. I think people are expecting Bello to be the extra backer for now. Because remember, everything changes again in 24 hours when the waiver wires hit, and so you're going to wind up with other opportunities to take people on.
And is Orchard going to be able to survive the cut?
Well, there were two guys. Janis was cut. Okay, Janis, they just canceled his contract, so he's gone. Which means, and I think Willie's will be gone, because they were rapping him for not busting his ass and he drops passes. The question about DeValve or Cajuste, Cajuste has taken on, a life of greater proportions because of Hard Knocks. Made 2 early catches, made 1 bad drop. I saw him working hard, trying to block, but it's very difficult to make it onto an NFL roster when you're a third string tight end who isn't a great blocker and who may not be a great special teams player. For Cajuste, it looks to me as if he was a guy who was more into getting into the pattern and using his hands, catching the ball downfield. He's not overly fast. Who was the guy we had a couple of years ago who was really good for us, who had an all-pro season for us? He was a tight end. Remember, he made some incredible catches during the course of the year.
Yeah, he's the one that they cut when they drafted Njoku.
That's right. And I feel terrible. I don't remember the man's name. Isn't that terrible? But that's the kind of guy that Cajuste is. Barnage. Thank you. Yeah, he played for the Panthers for a while. Yeah. Thank you. Can make it. I appreciate it. Barnage was it really came into his own in Cleveland. But that's unfortunately Gary Barnage. He was a guy also who was not a great blocker, but he got downfield and caught the ball. That's kind of like what Cajuste is. It's going to be hard for him to make the team. DeValve might get put on an extended injured reserve. It's hard to know what's going to happen at that position, but honestly, that's like what can I tell you? Small potatoes. I mean, Njoku is your tight end, and I guess Fells is your blocking tight end, and that's that. That's not good.
And goal line and the goal line tight end.
Yeah, Fells. I mean, he's a veteran, and he's a guy who knows how to play the position. That's usually who ends up getting that job. So Cajuste is really definitively on the bubble, or DeValve. One of those two guys is definitely going bye-bye. And it's happened to Cajuste a couple of times already, and his skill set is limited to, he may be a pretty decent downfield pass catcher, don't get me wrong, but for what he would be able to do in Cleveland, if he's not blocking and he's not special teaming.
He's basically Dallas Clark.
Yeah, I mean, he's just going to be a guy, that's the only way he would be contributing.
Catch 100 passes, but can't block for anything.
Well, I don't know that you can catch that many passes or anywhere near it, but I mean, again, when we start talking about cut day, we start looking at utility, and utility in the football world is expendability. Are you willing to cripple yourself and give up your life for special teams? That's how final roster cuts are made. Is like, okay, the guy's not going to start, but how and what other ways can this guy help us? It's like Drew Stanton. He's helping us by mentoring, young quarterback. That's the only reason he's on the roster. But, a lot of these guys are going to be looked at. Janis, they came to the conclusion he had the worst camp I've ever seen. And we signed him away from Green Bay, and it's like, we just don't need him. He just wasn't good enough. So then you have Danny Vitale, and Amsterdam's bringing up the fullback thing. Danny Vitale is a guy who's been on the team, but we haven't seen him at all. And he's a blocking fullback, and he is part of a jumbo package, but he doesn't, occasionally he gets a quick hitter on a 3rd and inches, but I mean, we just haven't seen anything really out of Danny Vitale.
Plus he's been hurt.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a couple of guys who are, Zeitler is another guy, and this is all part of the speculation as to why the Browns offensive line might shift around, because, Zeitler was maybe not ready or close to ready to coming back. And maybe they were hoping that he would, and not so, then they're going to have to start moving pieces around. There's a lot of questions within all of this. Now, the game itself, I mean, talk a little bit about Baker Mayfield. He was 9 for 17 for 138 yards, which 9 for 17 is more like Josh Allen completion percentages. It's not.
But again, there were throwaways that prevented bad negative plays. So
yeah, he wasn't going to force the ball in, and he gave us quite a lead. I will say this for him. I have watched the Browns for a lot of years. And that means I've seen a lot of quarterbacks. a lot. My feeling is there was, and I'm going all the way back to when Bill Nelson was done and they brought Mike Phipps in from Purdue. Okay, so I'm going back. All right, so we're talking.
Yeah, Sipe was stuck on the bench
48 years ago. We're talking about a long fucking time ago. Phipps became the quarterback, got us into the playoffs. We lost to the undefeated Dolphins. Played them tough, but lost. Then it became Phipps or Sipe, Sipe or Phipps. That went along for a year or two. And then Phipps got moved to Chicago, and Sipe, with Ritigliano's ascension, became the quarterback. Sipe was from a different era, but you could tell when you saw him play, it was like, well, why? You know, Phipps was 6'3" and 220 pounds and looked the part, but Brian Sipe was brainy and he had the balls, and you kind of had a good feeling about him. And then when the Sipe thing was done, and then we ended up with McDonald, EIEIO. He was terrible, cost Sam his job. He was a disaster. And then we had to wait. And then when we saw Kozar in 85, when I saw Kozar, I said, you know, we wanted him to succeed because he was a Youngstown guy and he wanted to play in Cleveland. But it was obvious from when you early saw him that he understood what he was doing. It wasn't the raw talent. Ooh, look at him scramble. It wasn't the RG3, oh wow, Michael Vick factor thing. Like, what an athlete. It was what he had between his ears. It was like, man, he learned Infante's offense. And I mean, he internalized it. And it was like, even though he didn't have the tangibles, he had so many intangibles. You looked at him and said, man, this guy's really going to help us win. And like now. And then after that, we God only knows, it's been, I can't remember.
We have one good season out of Testicle Verde.
Yeah, you had Pongo Pagel, Mike Pagel, who took over after Kozar, and that was a disaster. Yeah, you had Vinny colorblind Testaverde. Stay down, Vinny. Just stay down. And, then we had to go through the Kelly Holcombs, and we had to go, there's just so many that who can remember them all. I remember people were getting all excited about Kelly Holcomb so much so they gave him his own barbecue sauce. But, the truth is you threw a cover 2 at him and he just was flummoxed. Every team that ended up running cover 2s against him, he just could not decipher what he was supposed to do. So there were shortcomings. Jeff Garcia, who had no arm, and he was a little puke and a fuck of a person. We just, and then with the Whedon thing, the cannon for an arm, P. Brain, and then and then there's Baker Mayfield. And everything about Baker Mayfield says he gets it. He understands what he's doing. He's not as nearly as good now as he's going to be, but his whole history would suggest that people bet against him. He walked on and he became more than what they expected. And looking at him in the preseason, at his growth, you can see the wheels grinding. You can see now the urgency of him getting rid of the ball. That he got upset with himself for holding the ball too long week 3, week 4. He was decisive. The one thing I can say about him as things have progressed with the second unit is that when he drops back to throw, you get a feeling of purpose, not panic.
Todd Philcox.
Todd Philcox. Philcox was the guy. There was only one pattern. He went to Syracuse. The only pattern that he could throw was a slant pattern to Eric Metcalf. That's the only thing he can throw. He was horrible. That was just horrible. He was like a 48% completion guy. Horrible. In the end, you look at Baker and it's like he goes back to throw. He looks one way, looks the other, goes through his progression. And when he throws the ball, you look at the first play from that game, and they rolled him out left, and he had to stop and throw back across his body. Look at how he shifts his weight, his footwork. Watch how he gets his body into that pass and throws it right on the money to Cajuste. You watch that play over and over again. We haven't had a quarterback who can do that. We've had quarterbacks with arms, but they never had mechanics to go with the arm. This guy puts the ball where it's supposed to be thrown, where only his men can catch it. And he understands, and the checkdowns, he had a wonderful check down to Days early in the game where nothing was open downfield, but he found him separating from a linebacker. These are the things you start looking for in young quarterbacks, is how they're viewing, how they're seeing the field. And everything about him says yes to me. Everything about him. He's understated. He sits like he belongs on the sidelines. He is learning. He is proving himself. The team is in no hurry, and they shouldn't be in a hurry. But I'll tell you something. If Harrison turns out to be a real deal player and a mauler at left tackle, and we can move Bitonio back to his natural guard position, and Corbett, who I'm very high on because he's smart. He's a guy, and if he is suited to play center, and
he can play all 5 positions.
Yep, he is a smart guy. But if he turns out to be a better center than he is, a tackle or guard, then the whole Tyrod Taylor thing becomes a 1-year, okay, fine. Whatever happens this year happens. But you put together an offensive line that has people who are competent at what they're doing, and I will take my chances with Baker Mayfield. I will take my chances, and I will win with him because he is adaptable. He's confident. He doesn't get rattled. And he's learning without being subjected to too much punishment. And I haven't said this about a quarterback in Cleveland for God knows how long. I remember when I saw Deshaun Kaiser and I just shook my head. I said, what in the fuck does anybody see in this guy? I mean, and I can look back at Whedon, and you can just go from year to year to year at our young quarterbacks. And, they were getting pimped by different news sources. Ooh, this guy has a chance to really be something. Hi, Steven. How you doing?
How you doing?
Good. But the hype was always disproportionate to the actual skill of the quarterback. We've seen some guys come and go. Baker Mayfield is a real quarterback. Go ahead.
Mr. Moohead, I saw that game, and that's why I jumped in here. I wanted to ask both of you this.
Yes.
You guys pretty much said everything I was going to say, so I'm just going to reiterate a couple things you said. First of all, the Browns dominated that entire first half. The third quarter was a little bit slow, and then with that third string, I think it was Roback, or what's his name, or Roback?
Roback, yeah.
Yeah, he came in and threw for a touchdown or whatever. I did like number 27. What's his name? Mays.
Matthew Days. He got hurt though at the end of the game.
He was pretty good. A very good speed runner. And that check down play where he couldn't see anybody down the field in that first half and was able to connect to him. That Chubb's run for the touchdown was pretty good too.
It sure was.
I guess my concern is I know in weeks prior you said you were very tough on, hey, let's not put Mayfield in, let's let him learn from the other predecessors and then sort of integrate into the game maybe later on in the season or possibly next year. But I don't know, man. Something's telling me that week one, if you're giving me a decision and I'm in a win now sort of situation, we have to win now. Let's see what we got. I'm like, let's see what this kid got. So I'm on your side. I like his confidence.
Well, I don't think we're in a must win. I think that where we are, though, is potentially maybe 2 years closer than what I thought we would be. In other words, if somebody said to me, should Baker Mayfield play at all this year, I'd say no. Based on the roster turnover, no. We might end up having some surprises come out of this roster. There are some guys who, you know, like Jannard Avery, who just literally out of nowhere just kind of became really good, solid players. You know, if you get lucky with a Harrison, with an Avery once he gets healthy, and if you, God only knows if you bring Khalil Mack in, but that's a distant possibility. You start filling in positions with people who overachieve, or your draft ended up being a much better draft than what you thought it was going to be. I could see that offensive line getting good by the end of the year and playing Baker Mayfield at the very end of the year with nothing to lose because we'll have a losing record. But I could see the Browns actually becoming a 500 or better team in the following season.
Yeah.
I could actually see that happening. And I have no fear of Baker Mayfield being able to take the reins if he's given the reins next year. I have no fear of him taking the reins this year later in the season. But I think there's a lot of football to be played, and there's a lot to be determined about, you know, even a guy like Harrison.
You don't want to take a bunch of unnecessary hits, you know.
No, and Harrison is a guy, let's say Harrison turns into a beast, but he's got a history of having a troubled background, and, you know, who knows? He gets suspended. There's a lot of weeks ahead of us. So I'm not in a win now kind of a situation, but I think Tyrod Taylor knows too that he's in Cleveland for a year. You can't see this young kid play without realizing that he's got some serious talent and that the stage is not too big for him. He understands the offense. He's been working at his craft. He's not Johnny Manziel. He may be a little bit, you know, outgoing and all that, but he learns his craft.
Yeah. You got to admit something. If Mayfield, I mean, first of all, no Browns fans have gotten this much excitement over Mayfield since Johnny Manziel. I'm not trying to like compare the two. You know, they're totally different players, but the excitement on that, the excitement to see somebody come in there and play. And I also want to add that if Tyrod Taylor is not careful, he could lose his job very soon in the regular season, especially if he continues to do check down and hold on to the ball for too long. And I don't know. I wanted your guys' thoughts on that.
Well, he's holding on to the ball because nobody's getting the fuck open.
Yeah.
Or at least reasonably open to where you have somewhere to put the ball that the defensive back can't instantly make a play on it. So there's a reason he's having to do that. And without Josh Gordon to really lift the top of the defense, they can play up and shut down all of the short routes that they love to run with those slow guys. So,
well, what I can say, I wanted to make a comment about Hugh Jackson. You know, watching the Hard Knocks, I really have a problem with this man, and I think it's tied in that if Hugh Jackson left, I think that there would be a greater chance that Baker Mayfield would be the quarterback.
Yeah.
Hugh Jackson's comment, the aside, that and I haven't even seen it mentioned in the Cleveland press. One of the storylines that is big is Nate Orchard, his fourth year. And, you know, it's like Elvis, it's now or never, you know, for him, you got to be able to break through the barrier. And he had a disappointing game in week 3. And if you saw the stretching scene where he was doing kind of a yoga pose to stretch, and Hugh Jackson walks by Orchard and says to him, "What are you doing, praying?"
Huh.
He says, "Because you're going to have to."
Wow.
Now, I would fire that coach. I mean, I don't understand how that in any way, shape, or form motivates somebody And it's not like Orchard. Orchard is not like Spencer Drango or Sean Coleman. I think Nate Orchard is a guy that they wanted to be a specialized third down pass rusher, and it never has come to fruition. Maybe he doesn't have enough moves or technique or whatever the thing is. It was big at Utah for him, but hasn't translated into the pro level. And maybe this is just the final chance that he's going to get.
I think so too.
But I don't understand, why would the head coach of this team single him out on that when he was on camera to make a snarky comment like that? Man has got a family. He's trying to make it. He's doing everything he can do. He came out in the game and played well. He had a pick 6, for Christ's sake. He made tackles behind the line of scrimmage. He did what he was supposed to do. And this is what he's subjected to. Don't be surprised if some of these players blossom someplace else, is what I'm saying. Hugh Jackson is a cancer, and he's holding this whole organization and team back. This is the first preseason, and as it's gotten further in the preseason, the intensity of the second and third units matched the intensity of the first unit. There's effort being expended. We start seeing, Myles Garrett for, some of the talent he's flashing that we were looking for, but he was hurt last year. We're guys like Ogunjobi are flashing. We're seeing our guys in the backfield. We're seeing our defensive line push the other team backwards and start to smother the run. We're seeing defensive backs actually showing some technique on the island. We're starting to see the little beginning signs of a real professional football team. We don't need this killjoy as our head coach who just takes cheap shots at players. Fuck him.
It seems like they're just he's trying to take the fun out of the team, and he's like, har, 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 I'm your straw boss, har, 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 now get back to work, har, har, har.
Yeah, I think he is
Jimmy Haslam's color shield.
Yeah, and what he is a guy who is going to use his authority and flex his muscles to say what he wants to say, to prove that he's in charge, and it's pathetic. It's pathetic.
There's an ego. It seems like there's an ego. Like he's almost like, we're not having fun. This is work. It's like, dude, if these players are working together, they should have fun on that field. And you're doing everything you can to kill what little entertainment they're going to get. And then they're not going to play hard for you in the regular season. And you know where that goes. 1-15, 0-16.
And you can see, Hugh, saying things to people and walking away and coddling those who favor him, and give him lip service, and not so to those who don't. You saw Todd Haley get all over Jarvis Landry on the last program for not running hard after a ball, and then Willie's didn't hustle one, and he got in Jarvis Landry's face. Jarvis Landry didn't look very happy. I certainly understand that that Todd Haley is not everybody's cup of tea personally, but even Haley had the sense to apologize to him later, saying, hey, I'm sorry I yelled at you and went off on you like that. You would never get that from Hugh Jackson. Never. So if I'm going to compare dicks, I say the bigger dick is Hugh Jackson, because he can never be wrong. He's just, and he is absolutely wrong for this organization. I would say he's wrong for any organization. He's just the wrong personality type to bring this team up to the level that it needs to be. I was thrilled, though. I mean, Greg Williams and his insanity, it's rubbing off on the defense. I mean, you're finally starting to see signs of an attack defense, which we didn't see at all last year. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but think that putting Hugh Jackson in his place by basically saying we're taking the offense away from you, giving it to Haley, and you're not going to call plays, I really think that allows Greg Williams to step up, and it leaves Hugh as a man without a country, and it makes him so much more expendable, because before it was like, well, he's the quarterback whisperer. We can't afford, with young quarterbacks. But I don't think they even want him messing with Baker Mayfield. And to be honest with you, if he's not in charge of the defense and he's not in charge of the offense, he's a man without a country and he's thoroughly expendable. Yeah. I'm telling everybody that he's going to be fired quickly. I really believe this.
Zampese, Todd Haley's pick for quarterbacks coach.
I mean, this had nothing to do really with Hugh. No, Hugh didn't choose any of these people. And certainly it wasn't that Hugh was tight with Dorsey either. So I see him as on an island. He
was kind of on one of those, he reminds me of one of those managers at a grocery store I used to work at that no one liked. And they're like, man, if this guy's late one more time, we're going to fire him. But he just shows up right on time, so you can't fire him. So that one day is 1 minute late. They're like, yes, we can fire him now. You're fired. Get out.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see in the season that's not going as well as it should be. They're going to get rid of him, and nobody's going to mourn over this. And really, how would it affect the team? If you stop and think about it, he's not calling the plays. The offense is not radically different than what it was last year, except that it looks like somebody's exerting and working harder to execute it. Josh Gordon came back and said that, he knows a lot of the plays. So it's not that a lot has changed. So it isn't like, and obviously Haley understands the plays and, he's calling them. He understands the design of the offense. So what is Hugh's job in all of this?
But
and
go ahead.
But when you put your foot in your mouth and you insult people and you do foolish things, that seems to be his role. He doesn't seem to have a concrete role here. Go ahead.
If Flying J had never happened or had been resolved prior to the end of 2017, Hugh Jackson would have been fired. As long as that keeps looming over our heads, we're going to have to deal with Hugh Jackson because he's preventing all the slings and arrows that Haslam is nothing more than a racist Southern asshole.
Yeah. Can I add something to that? But at first, Hugh Jackson was criticized for not disciplining his players for being soft.
Right.
From executives around the league and from other owners said that he tends to be a little soft. Now, the last year or so, and even on Hard Knocks, it seemed like he's kind of taken a shift over, and now he's maybe being a little too hard or too aggressive, or maybe he's in an uncomfortable state where there's so much pressure on him to win that he just can't handle it. Maybe there's the fact that Hugh can't balance between being too soft or too hard and just trying to be assertive in the middle. Like maybe there's a balance structure that Hugh has a difficult point in trying to reach out to his players to where they're like, okay, we're excited to play for you. We're going to bust our ass for you. And we're going to win games as a result.
Yeah. I mean, I look at Hugh Jackson and he's inconsistent. If you're going to be a disciplinary coach, be a disciplinary coach to everybody, but you can't just pick favorites,
But do you agree at first that he was a little soft? Like he was overly criticized for being soft, though. And
yeah, I think that his MO is they talk about players, coaches, and all that. He wanted to be a player's coach for his job security. I don't think he's anybody's friend. I don't think he's anybody's ally. You can ask Deshaun Kaiser that. I think that what he does is he kind of smooths people over and schmoozes them. And it's all about gaining popularity amongst people and giving lip service to people, but then turning on them. He's kind of like Black Trump, if you will. He's a guy who pays very close attention to his approval ratings amongst a base of people. And if Hugh Jackson has the support of a majority of the players, that solidifies his power within the organization. That's who I think he is. But I think he can turn on anybody at any given moment. And he's proven that he has favorites and he has people who are in his doghouse. And, it's not, I don't think it's anything really all that surprising. I have a very dim view of him. And but I don't have a dim view of the Browns, and I think it's going to be an entertaining season. It's going to be frustrating in a lot of ways, especially early in the season. There's going to be a lot of calls for Tyrod Taylor's head. The offense is not ready for prime time. We don't have all of our pieces in place, and I think it's really going to be pathetic in week 1 against the Steelers. I think we're going to get annihilated by the Steelers, and I think there's going to be a lot of fan speak against Tyrod Taylor, but just everybody keep cool. I honestly believe that there is enough growth potential that by the end of the year, we'll be saying better things about this team than just all the lousy things that we've been saying the last couple of years.
Yeah, playing at Pittsburgh and then going at New Orleans after that's going to be 2 tough games there. But I think the Jets is a winnable game. And so maybe the Raiders might be a winnable game, but first 2 is going to be very difficult.
Well, I mean, you have a guy like Darnold, and, look, and he's going to start. I mean, because they played McCown in the final preseason game and he sucked the big moose. I like the idea of building your defense. If you're going to get Khalil Mack, I'm all for it. I mean, you got to be great at something, and starting with your defense, it would be wonderful. You keep people off the scoreboard, and even if you're not a winning football team, you face somebody like Darnold, and if you make him look good and you give him time to pick out and pick and choose with his arm, you're going to be in trouble. But if you have the ability to really pressure a young guy like that, you can beat a team like the Jets just on the basis of the mistakes that a rookie will make. Even if you have Tyrod Taylor and his 8 yards a pass and whatever, even if you have that, you'll score enough points if you can get the turnovers. And so I'm all for building the defense because the offense just really isn't ready. And that's the real main reason that I'm just not all that excited about Baker Mayfield playing now, because it isn't anywhere near the finished product. It just isn't anywhere near it. And I want to see him on the field with close to that final product, because I think that he will make us a better football team than Tyrod Taylor will.
I agree. Now, the question is, do you guys see Tyrod Taylor playing the remainder of the year, all 16 games?
I would like him to.
But I would doubt that he would. And the reason is, that history shows that these guys get hurt, and he already got hurt in one preseason game and avoided a wrist fracture. 2 is that he's a 1-year guy at this point contractually, and you got a young quarterback who's number 1 pick, who's waiting in the wings, and you're likely going to be absolutely nowhere at the end of the season, and there's going to be temptation if the offensive line and different things are gelling. Hey, let's see what this kid can do. So I do believe that weeks 14, 15, and 16, you could very easily see Baker Mayfield as your starting quarterback, with the understanding that Tyrod Taylor wasn't going to stay in Cleveland for longer than a year anyway.
Well, and a lot of that I think is also going to have to do with the health of Chubb and Hyde at the end of the year too. Because if you have no running game, you're going to be one-dimensional out there with Baker Mayfield, and that's a bad combination.
Yeah. I have right now more hope for Chubb than I do for Hyde. Hyde is a known commodity, and I don't think that he's been like the not so great Isaiah Crowell was. We had Crow have one really good year, then we had the not so great Crow. Well, that's kind of what Hyde has been his whole career. He's been kind of a 3.8 to 4.2 yard carry guy, but just not anything like what they presumed he might be coming out of Ohio State. The thing with Chubb is that I see in him a physicality and a grind, and I could see him in the AFC North. I could see him getting better the more he touches the ball. See, unlike Duke Johnson, who if he has to touch the ball too much, he just gets beat up. Chubb's a guy who's got size, strength, determination. And I feel like a little more positive about him than Hyde, although Hyde will start. Chubb, I think when Chubb looked as good as he did, you notice how quickly they got him out of that fourth game. And you didn't see him again on the field. I think the team has high hopes. I think that he's going to be getting more and more playing time as the season goes. It's not so much how good you are necessarily, but who you know. If you haven't heard, the Cleveland Cavaliers have lost yet another individual, Allie Clifton, who was the Fox Sports Ohio courtside reporter, is no longer going to be doing Cavaliers games. She, in fact, is headed to Los Angeles to cover the Lakers.
Wow.
Go figure.
I wonder why.
I can't figure that out myself. It's unbelievable. And everybody will always say the same thing. It doesn't matter where LeBron James plays. It was in Cleveland the first time, and it's like, no, Cleveland, LeBron doesn't hold any special sway, and LeBron's entire posse is smoking weed, and then Pat Riley, no, the speech we gave him, he took a pay cut, and and then you find out that LeBron could come and go as he pleased, that LeBron took his own flights, and now it's like, oh yeah, and by the way, Magic, I want this girl in the studio doing the pregame and postgame shows. Just get it done. And it's like, wow. And I'll tell you something. I think
it's good to be the king.
Huh?
It's good to be the king.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I'll tell you, Allie Clifton really improved from the first time when she was the UT graduate who was unsure of herself. She really gained some polish. And this is such a necessary step when you're in a mid-sized market to get an opportunity to do a major market gig. They're going to make her over differently. She's going to have a different look, but she's gained polish, and they're going to package her in a way, and it's great for her. And she is going to have to kind of join the line behind Dante Jones and Damon Jones and, Mario Chalmers and all the people. It's like, oh, thank you, LeBron, for getting me to where I got. He's going to have to fall in the line. It's a great opportunity for her. I'm thrilled for her. But wow, it just shows you what kind of authority he exerts over an organization.
Yep.
Just amazing. And you know something? I'm going to say something because everybody knows how much I loved watching LeBron James play. And I can tell you that I'm not going to be watching Lakers games, and I don't care about the Lakers, and I don't care about LeBron anymore. He's the best basketball player I've ever seen play in my life. He won a championship in Cleveland. He'll always be the greatest to me. Yeah. But I'm not going to continue following him. There's no reason, because I'm not a fan of the Los Angeles Lakers, nor would I ever be. But in a way, no matter how bad we're going to be, it's going to be pretty bad. Not having that constant drain of having to answer to him might not be the worst fucking thing in the world either.
Yep.
He's a great player, but with great player, it's like the diva thing. It's like, back in the early 1990s, you wanted to see Barbra Streisand, you had to pay $300 a ticket, so she could go up there and preen and talk about whatever silly shit she wanted to talk about between shows. And, people took shit from Barbra Streisand because she was like a total cunt to work with, right? Mm-hmm. But what came out of her throat was amazing. She's an amazing singer. I mean, honestly, honest to God. I mean, like once in a lifetime kind of talent. And that's what LeBron is. But, you know, all the subtweets, all of the rabble rousing and all that, yeah, in a way, it's kind of good. Probably going to allow Ty Lue to live longer. Not having somebody, you know, breathing down your neck, and then whenever things go wrong, always putting themselves in the position where they look like they were right all along. You know, LeBron had his flaws too. But, you know, great for Ali Clifton, my God. And Braxton Miller was waived from Houston. So former Ohio State quarterback transitioning to wide receiver, and
it never worked out with that guy. He never could live up to par. I'm kind of glad they cut him, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and
it's nice to see J.R. Smith is back in the news for smashing somebody's phone in front of a restaurant in New York City. The man can't stay away from New York City. Let him go back. He wanted to leave, it seems to me, but he wants to keep going back. It's like, fine. Give him to the Knicks. Just give him back to the Knicks, okay? Tired of that act, too. He wasn't good enough to be able to do shit like that. There was a time when he was good enough that you get away with that shit. Not now.
No.
He's a 32% three-point shooter and a bad shot selection guy who's just gotten old and lost a step on defense. Fuck him.
He's turning into Rodney Hood.
Well, Rodney Hood is... They would erect a statue and for Rodney Hood, and the only thing that would be realistic, because the statues never look like somebody, the only realistic thing is that the legs don't move and the feet don't move. That's what I think of Rodney Hood.
It would be a giant vagina with legs.
Yeah. Rodney Hood, honestly, I mean, if they wanted to market how soft Charmin bathroom tissue is, they could just use his fucking picture. You know, anything that you wanted to do that would get across the word soft, you know, like those, what do they call it? Like the Febreze sheets you throw into the dryer to make your clothes soft and fresh, or Downy, you know, big picture of Rodney Hood on a Downy bottle. That's what I think of Rodney Hood. And we're going to re-sign this guy for what? And he's going to be jacking up shit. He's going to make you wish that CJ Miles was back on this team. That's saying a hell of a lot.
Oh, yeah. Now he's with Toronto.
One last thing before I get out of here. The clock is ticking on the last chance for the Indians to improve their postseason roster by midnight on Friday. You want to know something? We gave away Francisco Mejia for nothing. Really. Nobody believes that Hand is a great closer and Simber is an absolute disaster, okay? And the only reason Hand comes in, well, handy, is that Cody Allen has just turned into a pumpkin at midnight. There's two teams right now active in Cleveland. One of them is the Browns and one of them is the Indians. And for me to be saying that the Browns are the serious ones has got to be the worst thing I can say about the Indians. The Indians are just not serious. They're more interested in protecting Jason Kipnis and protecting the people who are just mediocre and not shelling out the money and using the mid-market excuse over and over and over again. I also wanted to point out, I mean, with the news that Andrew McCutchen now is a New York Yankee, that the Yankees are not done. The Yankees are not done. They have until midnight tonight, too. And I just read that they've signed the corpse of Aretha Franklin. And when asked why, it's because they can afford it. And that's what it all is.
What's amazing is they gave her a 20-year, $2 billion contract.
And a little respect, which is something that was required in the contract, okay? But, you know, so Aaron Judge may not be coming back anytime soon or whatever the situation is there. So Andrew McCutcheon ends up a Yankee. And the Indians are sitting there picking their nuts. They're not serious.
No. I mean, they're already letting Boston run away with first place. They already acknowledged that. I think they're just getting ready for postseason play.
And there ain't no reason to get excited about that because the team isn't serious. I mean, you're going to go into the postseason with hoping that Neil Ramirez recovers from back spasms, with Oliver Perez, who's 34 years old, with Cody Allen, who has suddenly lost his GPS system, without Andrew Miller at strength, because I told you weeks ago I was concerned why he was only throwing 91, 92 instead of 95 and 96, and it turns out he has a shoulder impingement. They're not serious. They didn't do anything to improve their offensive situation, and Yandy Diaz doesn't get to play even though they were winning when he was. They're not serious, and I'm not serious about them. I'm more serious about the Browns because the Browns are at least showing some desire to play the football game, and the coaches, not Hugh, but his assistant coaches, are at least, it seems.
How much did you want to vomit when Francona was gushing about the miraculous turnaround of Jason Kipnis, and he's looking more like himself now.
Yep.
It's like, come on.
But that's exactly what you get. And you know something? They even tried to slide the little cowboy back in on us at the end of the season. And you know, the thing is, if Cleveland Clinic is so far advanced in treating cancer, I wonder if they can cause it just as easily. Because I'm sick of Josh Tomlin. I'm sick of them dredging his corpse back to this team to try to side door his way back in. And fortunately, every time he's coming to the game, he's giving up blasto home runs. And he's done. He's finished. But the team won't acknowledge it because they're not fucking serious. And that's it. That's all I have to say about the Indians. But the game's going to start, and I want to watch them play the Rays because the Rays are a team that's going to be hard for the Indians to beat. Well, hell, it was not easy beating the Twins. That's it. Guys, I appreciate you helping me out, and let's see what happens, and come back Monday, and we'll have the full cut story on Moohead Radio Monday at 6 o'clock. Okay, guys?
All right.
All right. Take care, everybody, and thanks for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. Back again Monday. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.